everybody. Today we're talking about redefining authority. So before I get into the 3 points that I'm going to make today, I want to talk about what authority is. So when you think about the word authority, what comes to mind? It might be the word boss. So it could be your title or the title of someone that you consider to be in authority. It could be their position within an organization that you can see. It could be being recognized, right? We might have seen somebody win an award, or we might see them on a stage, or we might see them as being recognized by an organization or a group of people as someone who has authority, or they might be appointed to that title. But I really want you to think about what authority actually means. Because what I've seen in more than 30 years in the printing industry is that it is not that clear to define. It isn't that clear to see. So when we think about authority, we have to go beyond titles. And again, pay attention with all of our senses. We might hear language that sounds authoritative. We might see body language and positioning. We might see the reactions of other people in a room. Who do they look at? Who do they defer to? And we aren't seeing the titles in those moments, are we? We're seeing something that might be a little bit more intangible. So I want to tell a little story just right out of the gate, because I got started selling in the printing industry when I was 26 years old. And I learned very quickly. I knew that sales was something that I always wanted to do, but I also knew that leading and helping others and coaching others was something that was just in my DNA from a very young age. And I was also pretty intentional about finding mentors. And so there came a point relatively early in my career, let's say within the first 5 or 6 years, that I had an opportunity to step into a position of sales management. One of my mentors said to me, "You don't have enough experience for that. You haven't been bloodied up enough for that. Don't do it." And I sat with that advice for a bit, and then I decided that I didn't agree with that advice. I did not think that that was sound advice because I know myself better than anybody else. So I ignored that advice. And sometimes when I think about what my career might have looked like if I hadn't ignored that advice and if I had waited, I think things would have looked very different for me. So that to me was a very powerful moment of centering my authority around my own inner voice and my own decision making and not deferring or ceding that authority to somebody else. So I really think that that is a powerful story that I want you all to think about for a second. So the first point I want to make is that authority is something that you carry within yourself, not something which is bestowed to you or granted to you, right? So when we think about it, again, it might be title, it might be a recognition. But I always go back to this episode of a great show called Workin' Moms, where the woman turns to another actor in the room, a character in the room, and says, "No one's coming," right? And "no one's coming" has become a pretty familiar rallying cry for us as women in multiple industries and multiple places in our lives. But the point is, the authority you seek is already within you, and you are the one who grants it to yourself. So imagine yourself pinning a badge on yourself or putting a crown on your head, whatever that looks like. It is you that gets to decide it. So I want you to think about this. There may be a role within an organization that doesn't exist today. Maybe it's a title that doesn't exist. Maybe it's a set of responsibilities, deliverables, and KPIs that does not exist within the organization you work for or an organization you want to work for. You can pitch that. You can create a job description. You can create a set of responsibilities and deliverables and impact and even measurable things, and you can pitch that to an organization, maybe to your organization or someplace you want to work. That is an example of stepping into authority and making things happen for yourself. So I really want you to think about what that might look like and feel like for you as you think about what is standing in the way of you being allowed to achieve your full potential? Let's not even say being allowed, you achieving your full potential. This might start to sound like I've always wanted to ... or if things were different for me, I could ... or if I had a different team or different people cheering for me, this is what I could accomplish. And let's flip that around, take it inside, and decide how we are going to make that happen today. So the second point I want to make is that we find ourselves many times in a situation where we are waiting for something to happen, waiting for the job to open up, waiting for somebody to retire, waiting for somebody to recognize all of the amazing gifts and talents and skills that we possess. And what happens when people wait is nothing in some cases, right? So we really want to think about what we are waiting for and create that circumstance and those parameters ourselves. Because if we wait to be fully qualified, if we wait to apply for the job until we are 100% qualified for it, that day may never come. You've heard us talk before about the statistic that says that a man will apply for a job for which he is 30% qualified, where women statistically wait until they are 90% qualified for a job. So this will be a little bonus task for you. I'm going to give you one at the end too. But I would love for you to go out into the world, whether it's Indeed or LinkedIn Jobs or somewhere, Glassdoor, wherever, and look for your dream role, and then look for how much you believe you are currently qualified and tenured, and do you possess all of the right educational background for that? And then really ask yourself that question. Is it less than 90%, and would I see myself applying for this job? And the answer is yes. Let's lower that threshold and open up our aperture for that which we can go after even before we are fully ready. Because the ramification or the negative consequence of waiting is stagnation, is faltering in one place for so long that there comes a time when you can't even envision a world in which you might consider leaving. And that to me is a pretty big tragedy, that lost opportunity, those lost pathways, those sliding door moments, if you will. So let's again talk about challenging the assumption. This is, again, something that I think is a really important element to this, and that is authority is not always loud. If you look on a ball field or, any kind of competitive environment, it might look like the coach is the loudest, so you would assume they have the authority. You might assume that the captain has the authority. Maybe on a baseball analogy, it looks like the pitcher has all the authority because they're always front and center. They almost always hold the ball. But there may be a different way of looking at that. There may be a way that looks at that it might be the catcher who's calling the pitches. There might be other people that possess authority, but they do that quietly. They do it behind the scenes. So I really want you to pay attention as you move through the world after watching this video. Walk into rooms, assess, do a vibe check. Who has the authority and why? It might just be that the person who is listening and taking notes and synthesizing and kind of creating some processes and outcomes in their mind that might be the one who has the most authority. It might be the person who you see observing and asking insightful questions, but doesn't always demand the spotlight, doesn't demand to be the person at the table who says the most words. Authority can be quiet, it can be a little bit stealth, and everybody is different. Your authority looks different than my authority. But what we at Girls Who Print want you to do is step into that authority, because no one's coming to give it to you. You see the opportunity, you act, you take the authority, you make it happen. Thank you so much.